Today we're going to be talking about, should you be a specialist or should you be a generalist in your career, what that all really entails and why, right? So it's always important not to just say yes or no, but let's give a why as to why you should be one or the other. Hey guys, a little quick shout out to get some affiliate money. I've been reading the Complete Software Developer's Career Guide for the last month. I have 80 pages left of it. You can see I'm almost done. It's almost 800 pages. I think this is one of those books that John did an excellent job on, first off. But also I think it's a book that everyone who is going into software development should read at some point in their career to sort of have some eye-opening experiences as well as just some solid advice. So if you're interested in it, there'll be a link in the description. So, generalist and specialist is something that I find very fascinating, and we'll talk a little bit about each one of them, each of them, and why. But let's start at the beginning of your career, right? You are interested in becoming a developer, and you're saying, how can I do it the best? 70% of jobs, right, are full stack, and we'll talk a little bit about why I don't really believe that stat always, but it is true that the job descriptions are, 70% full stack in general. So when you're starting out, you want to typically be a generalist because you want to be applicable to as many things as possible, right? You want to have some front-end skills. You want to have some back-end skills. You want to have some UI, UX skills. You want to have some testing skills. You want to have some DevOps skills. Because, especially, you open yourself up to a lot more positions and you become a much more attractive candidate. And whether this is fair or not, typically the thing that is going to be most relevant on your resume in your career, other than, of course, the skills that you have, is just job years of experience, right? And so you need to get that as soon as possible. I think it was the Stack Overflow survey said 1/3 of developers haven't been coding more than 2 years, and it was something like 57% 5 years or under. So when you start getting those years of experience, you can see very rapidly how you are becoming more and more valuable in a very short period of time, right? If you have 6 years experience in the industry, you are above the majority of the people in the industry, right? That's kind of crazy. But so when you're getting started, you want to go down that generalist route because you're going to be more, the full stack sort of generalist route, that you're going to be more sought after because you're going to be able to do 2 jobs, essentially 3 jobs, right? Or maybe you have some startups where like, look, man, we can't hire a front end and a back end. We just got to have one, right? And that is a very real consideration. And when you're getting your career started, that is what hiring managers are going to look for. That is what the managers just in general are going to say, hey, we're looking to fill this spot. This guy has no experience, but I can see that he has full front end, back end, DevOps, because although you may not need to be doing DevOps all the time, although you may not need to be doing testing all the time or front end all the time, and perhaps they'll just make you in back end, it is good to know that as a candidate that you do have these skills so that if something does happen, that you can go and handle the situation. And so when you're starting your career, generalist is kind of the best route to go to, right? No one really wants that employee who says, hey man, that's the back end. I don't even know how to look at that, right? But it is worth mentioning that as you get farther down in your career, the industry as a whole is moving towards a specialist route, right? There's so much to know just in back end, just in front end, and DevOps and testing, that in general, as you progress, you will become a specialist more than likely, right? And you'll be paid very well for it, right? If you have 10 years as a full stack developer, which is, you're doing a little bit of everything, that's good. But if you want to hire the best, C# developer that's only been working in C#, while someone's been working in C#, JavaScript, has been working on, in Linux and trying to deploy things and Bash and all this sort of stuff, they're not going to be better than the guy who's only specialized in one thing. And what ends up happening is the specialist later on have a little bit more value. Not to say that the full stack devs don't, or developers who are more generalists don't. They have plenty of value as well. We're just comparing the two. And so as you progress in your career, you probably should be some sort of specialist in whatever facet of software development that you really enjoyed. And that's another great thing about starting your career as a generalist, is that you can sort of try it all, right? It's like a buffet, right? So if you've never, if you've gone to a new buffet that you haven't gone before, at least is my mentality, is I like to go and I like to get a little bit of, 1 or 2 bites of everything. And it's kind of that same way with software development, where that first trip, you get 1 or 2 bites of every little piece of software, the front end, the back end, the UI, UX, the QA, the DevOps, all that. And then you try it. You try each one, and then you realize, you know what? That chicken liver, Dylan, that you got was awful. Don't ever get chicken liver again, right? This is a very recent buffet experience. So, but the point I'm trying to say is that you can try it all and then figure out what you should specialize in. And typically, I just recommend specializing in what you enjoy, because I think you'll be more successful in what you enjoy and what you work on outside of work, because you enjoy it, right? And you'll be more successful in the long run than just choosing something that makes $10,000 more. So that's my little recommendation when choosing your sort of specialist route. But one thing to keep in mind with every good specialist is a decent generalist, right? So as you are progressing in your career, for you to be a good front-end developer, you have to understand how the back end works, right? You have to understand how routes work. You have to understand, a little bit of UI UX to say, hey, this would look better here. I know the requirements have it like this, and speak up to that, and how testing would work. And I give you a perfect example. It was like 2 weeks ago. One of my endpoints wasn't working properly without even looking at the code. Just because I understand how the backend works, I didn't create a bug ticket or anything. I just messaged my teammate, said, hey man, you probably there's a 95% chance that this is what's breaking this endpoint. You want to go ahead and fix it, or you want me to dive into it and knock it out? I don't do backend, but I understand how the backend works. I can also read code and go and fix it. And because I'm able to understand how the backend works, I understand what's breaking in a very basic thing where, hey, don't worry about looking through all the code. I'm 95% sure. Get started on this direction and just eliminate that one and end up being it. So the reason I'm talking about that is, in order for you to be a good specialist, you have to understand how the other parts work. So you have to be a decent generalist. And it's very powerful to you, because not only do you find the correct path as a specialist, but you also provide a lot of value in that way. And that's why that 70% full stack of jobs, right? I forget the exact number, but something like 30% of jobs or 10% of jobs are front end, 20% are back end, 70% are full stack. That full stack number is a little bit misleading. I've worked with a ton of full stack developers, and I can tell you that they can do front end much like I can do their back end, and that's usually not very well. And so what ends up happening is you get a lot of full stack developers who, I know JavaScript, I know this back end. This isn't to like talk shit on anybody or anybody specific. So if one of the coworkers are watching this, I love you all. But this is just a generalized statement. Is a lot of times what ends up happening is you have front-end devs who are specialized, and then you have a lot of full-stack devs that really are just back-end developers that can play around in the front end, right? Much like how you can have a front-end dev that can play around in the back end. And unfortunately, that's the reality of a lot of full-stack developers. And it's not necessarily their fault at times, but it is something to be said that you become a specialist later on in your career, even if these roles are hiring generalists, because they really just want to make sure that you have these 1-2 core competencies, right? They say, okay, full stack dev and C# and .NET, and then they have a bunch of other crap, but they really just care about that C# or .NET, and they want, you can get better as you need to work in the JavaScript, right? As you need to work in the HTML, CSS, they just expect you to get better for that. And so a lot of these full stack dev offerings are very misleading in that aspect because there's really sort of 1 or 2 skills on every resume that they're looking for, and they just want you to be able to say, yeah, I can jump in the back end, I can do a little DevOps, yeah, I can do a little bit UI UX, be familiar with the tools that are being used, but you don't necessarily need to specialize in them and know them inside and out. So that's sort of my thoughts on being a specialist or a generalist. Just to sum it up, pretty much generalist at the start of your career, because you'll get exposed to a lot of things that you can find out what you like, right? What's fun, what's exciting for you, and then you can be able to apply to a lot of different jobs because it's hard to get those years of experience. But once you do, it's like you're on the inside, man. You're robbing the bank blind. No, yeah, but and then as you progress in your career, after you've sort of played around with a few things, becoming a specialist. Mainly because I think long term that's better for your career. And then the other thing about becoming a specialist is that once you have sort of quote unquote mastered something, right, which take a decade in my opinion, and as the trend seems to be more specialized and more general, it's very easy to transition to another thing to specialize in, right? So if you're worried like, oh well, I've specialized only in the front end, Dylan, and now there's no front end jobs. Well, you've learned how to specialize in something. You've learned a large skill set that's still going to be valuable to a degree. But if you need to, you can take that skill and now you can go specialize in something else, right? And just, jump one specialization to another every 5 to 10 years, right? So something to keep in mind. So anyhow, guys, I appreciate you watching this video. My cat's been like scratching at my feet this whole video, so if I've been sort of losing my concentration, that's why. I'll see you guys I guess in the next video. Don't forget to comment, like, subscribe, share, support me on Patreon, all that good stuff. Check out my courses. See you next time. Bye. Ooh, buddy. Oh, Dave's got to film though. Buddy. Oh. Good boy. Alright. This is how Daddy gets no work done. Oh, booty hole in the camera. Quick thank to our sponsor, DevicePlus.com. If you guys are interested in Arduino and the Internet of Things, such as Raspberry Pis, might I recommend checking them out at DevicePlus.com. If you click the link in the top corner, it'll take you to a really cool thing. It's an intro beginner level tutorial of how to build a tripwire using Arduino. Check it out.